Much for joining us. Before we get on the next conversation, let's let you know that there's a live event to which we're taking you. It's happening. It's the 2025 Tony Elumelu Foundation selection announcement, and it's happening right now at the Congress Hall of the Transcorp Hilton in Abuja. This is for our DSTV audience alone. The program continues on other platforms. So if you want to continue with us, you can just switch to YouTube on your smart TV or any other device you have. But to let you know that on DSTV, what you will be seeing any moment from now will be the Tony Elumelu Foundation selection announcement at the Congress Hall, Transcorp Hilton in Abuja. So our next conversation is about the World Water Day, celebrated every 22nd of March since 1993. The World Water Day focuses on the importance of fresh water with special attention on Goal 6 of the UN SDGs, which seeks to ensure water and sanitation for all in the next 5 years. Yeah. When we say 2030, sounds like 2030 is very far away. No, it's just 5 years from now. So across the country, Nigeria is blessed with rivers. Despite this huge endowment of nature, access to potable water remains a problem for the majority of the people. Let's have conversations with this morning, the head of Advocacy, Policy and Communications of WaterAid Nigeria, Kolawole Banwo. Good morning and thank you for joining us.
Good morning. Thank you for having me.
Yeah.
And happy World Water Day to you all.
So, why is it important for people to understand? Why is it important for us to recognize and set aside a day for World Water Day?
Well, considering that we talk about SDG, actually, it is clear that without water, which is SDG 6, you are hardly going to be unable to achieve all the other SDGs, because water is linked to health, water is linked to education, water is linked to livelihoods. You need water for industry, you need water for domestic use, and like they say, water is life. And with 2.2 billion people globally still struggling to have access to water, safe water. In sub-Saharan Africa, you have about 400 billion still struggling. And in Nigeria, you have about 45.5 million Nigerians who are still struggling to have water close to home. A situation where you have us losing 65,000 children still to diarrhea before they clock the age of 5 because of poor water sanitation issues in hospitals, where you have only 1 in 10 schools where people have access to basic water, sanitation, and hygiene. You can imagine what that means. And only 1 in 20 health facilities actually have the kind of water they need to deliver proper health quality delivery. It becomes an issue that we need to talk about it, considering that with climate change coming up and several other issues, if we don't pay attention to water, we take it for granted, especially safe water. We're going to be having issues where water, which should be life, will be delivering death because we are not paying attention to people having access. We are not paying attention to the quality of water to make sure it's not containing chemicals that will cause cancer and kidney failure in the next 10, 15 years.
Let's be a little more practical, Mr. Banwo. If you can hear me, my apologies. Let's be a little more practical. The experience that a good number of Nigerians have had about this conversation, the importance of water, and how importantly we consider it, is something else altogether. Growing up in Lagos, on Lagos Island in particular, I remember a time when we sipped water from the public taps. Now, it's either the taps don't exist or they are unsafe. There was a time in the 90s into the early 2000s. Lagos State, for instance, had a very active and virile Water Corporation organization, Lagos State Water Corporation. You could see their vehicles all over the place, and there was water accessible and available in almost every part of the city. But it would seem like that is not much to talk about now. I happened to ask a governor at some point, one of the former governors now, and we were talking about something, and he said, look, the reason water projects don't really see the light of day much is that the infrastructure that runs them are not seen. And so they are piped under earth and all those things, and people just see some small stuff, and they say that is the water infrastructure. Because people don't see it, it would seem like they haven't done anything. So how do you, because I would say that this whole conversation about clean water should be something for the state governments. Tell me if I'm wrong. How then do we approach this if the perspective is the way it is?
Thank you very much. Yes, you are very correct. Water is on the concurrent list, and you have water supply at all levels. At the national and federal level, you have a federal ministry that should be coordinating, really, supporting with policies, supporting with frameworks, supporting with big projects, like you have water dams that are cross-boundary, cross-states, and all. But when it comes to actually getting clean water to the people, it is primarily the responsibility of state governments. And what we do on World Water Day, which we do in all the states, and we engage all state partners, is to draw their attention to that. What you have said now is the reality. And the reality is that, just like it is with Nigeria and many other things, at a point we stopped planning. Population was increasing, and we have the same facilities. We have the same infrastructure that is meant for 10 million, and we expect it to serve 50 million without investing to expand it. Pipes, networks. We didn't plan well, so we started developing places and breaking pipes that were laid many years ago because we didn't plan it ab initio to say, we're going to be developing this place. We need to ensure that when we are laying pipes, we don't need to destroy the pipes when we are constructing roads. So what happened in a place like Lagos is that some places where I had water, now they need to build roads. The pipes have been broken to make way for the road, to make way for construction of residential places, and the pipes that were laid can therefore not deliver water to the places it is meant to deliver for. So once you don't plan, water is a development issue. Once you don't plan it in that manner with long-term, population increase, population migration, rural-urban shift, you do not plan it well with a proper census in terms of where people are, you will have issues with education, with health. It's like that with every social services, okay? And then, of course, how do you manage the water? Government will tell you, we'll give you water. But water is not free. You need to invest resources in it. You need to build treatment plants. You need to ensure that you have reagents in the lab to test the quality. You need to pay workers who are making sure water go well so that they can have a meaningful living. You need to train technicians. You need to train chemical engineers. You need to train all these people with the modern skills, with up-to-date. So all that requires investment for the water to get to the tap. So when you say you're going to give free water and you're not investing to ensure that that happens, then the water will be very, very erratic, and then at some point it dries up. So when the governor says we are doing our best, people are not seeing it. Once people cannot get water in the taps, no matter what else you do and how much you spend, you are just telling stories. And that's what we say with advocacy and why we commemorate these days. To let government know that what you need to do is to ensure that ultimately the last mile at the government level in the rural, we're talking of rural areas, we're not got to the rural areas. We're still talking about urban centers.
Mr. Banwo,
urban slums, I imagine.
Just a moment, Mr. Banwo, slow down now.
How would they have water?
Hey. Thank you. You are very passionate about this, and it shows. But please give us the whole so that we can ask questions. Right, let me take you back a bit. During COVID, it was wash your hands. Wash your hands. And there was some advocacy about states giving us more water so that at least we could wash our hands and stay alive. To your mind, between then and now, has there been noticeable investment in providing water in Nigeria, that is across the states? Potable water, that is.
I'm sorry to say, I cannot say yes. The answer is closer to no. And the reason is because we were in emergency mode. And there's a difference between emergency response and development, okay? now there's an outbreak and we're all running and panicking.
Yeah.
Which is why we do these days again, to remind government that we don't have to wait for another emergency before we emphasize this thing and do it in a development and a planned way.
Exactly.
In many
we've had 5 years.
In this country, 85 to 90% of water supply in homes are what we call self-supply.
Yes.
People dig their own boreholes, or somebody digs a borehole and then get water vendors to buy and sell and deliver to households. Government investment in public utilities to supply water presently is very, very minimal. And the state governments are supposed to be primarily responsible for this. We are not investing enough in water, and that's why we do World Water Day, to remind everyone that we need to be doing this as a deliberate and conscious thing.
How much has Water Day affected the way that Nigerians treat water, to conserve it and stuff like that? Do we understand the need to conserve because there isn't enough?
Yes, World Water Day happens annually, but in between, a lot of advocacy and sensitization goes on. For instance, in WaterAid, when we engage communities, when we engage students in schools, when we engage people in local communities, we let them know we have what we call water safety plans, where we let people know that ultimately you have a responsibility to treat water well, to ensure that when you have a pipe leaking around you, you report to the authorities so that it is fixed. And you don't leave the tap running unnecessarily when you don't need the water. Because the more water you use, there's what we call unaccounted for water. And that's water that leaks through the system. Nobody actually uses it and nobody pays for it. And the money invested into its production is therefore a waste. So yes, there's a lot of sensitization that goes on with communities, with several CSOs, local NGOs, working in communities. You need to conserve water, use it well, and don't do anything that pollutes water, because water polluted from this point can affect people downstream, whether it is a river body, whether it is a well, whatever it is. You need and you have to be responsible for conserving water, protecting the water source to ensure that it is free from pollution and contamination, and then not wasting it as much as possible. That is going on. We are yet to do some data and statistics in terms of how effective it has been and what progress we have made, but I can assure you that that kind of education is going on through our schools, through our WASH com development, where we have in many local places where they manage their own local source of water, they educate one another and ensure that water continues to run for them to continue to use as much as is possible.
Mr. Banwo, please help us understand this. There are a whole lot of bodies of water in Nigeria. So how come it is so difficult for us to get water from those sources and purify water from those bodies for domestic use?
Yes, that's why we say we have an economic scarcity of water and not a physical one. The water is available, but it takes investment into resources and infrastructure to extract the water, treat it, store it properly, and then dispense ultimately to the end users. Those require huge capital investment. You need water pumps at several levels. You need pipes that are safe in terms of quality. You need storage facilities that are safe and that will not allow water to be contaminated while being stored. You need the human capital and people who will test this water from source across the travel chain until it is delivered, and from time to time they do the check. That requires investment, and that's what I was saying when I was responding to Ayo the other time. We have not done that investment over a period of time. And so we have this wide gap that now requires huge amounts of money, millions of dollars. And of course, with the economic situation and everything, coming up with that resources, prioritizing it with other challenges have become an issue, and our governments are struggling at federal, at state, and indeed at local levels to do that. So people then take the laws into their hands. People must have water, so they start digging their own boreholes, because groundwater is everywhere and accessible to everyone. All you need to do is be able to dig deep enough to access it. So you have boreholes littered all over the place. And people are extracting water for themselves because the government and the state infrastructure and agencies have failed to do just that, just as you said.
Would you say that the states have adequate water policies?
Yes, quite a number of states have policies. But again, you need to invest money in implementing the policies. A policy tells you, give you a
down
roadmap
to
of
money
where
all
you
the
want to
time.
go. There are water policies, there are water laws. Quite a number of states have them, but that has not translated into people having water, even in those states. Because then you need to budget appropriately. If you say you will need to expand water facilities for another 100,000 people, 2 million people, it won't happen because you have a policy. You need to find out what you need to do, an implementation strategy, and how much you need. You need to cost your policy and then invest in it systematically, cumulatively over a period before you get the result that the policy intends to deliver.
You know, Mr. Banwo, that this whole thing about policies leads me straight to this question of cultural practices that either assist or mitigate against water conservation, water health, water safety in our different communities.
Get that?
Can you hear me?
I heard you, but I didn't quite get the question.
I said that question of policy or no policy leads straight to the question of whether or not we have cultural practices that assist or mitigate against water conservation and water safety in our various communities.
Yes, ideally, under normal circumstances, policies should be context-specific, and they should take into consideration those practices, those realities, and then try to see how you weave it around so that you don't throw away what is working and what is good simply because you are introducing a new policy. So we have cultural practices, we have education practices. I mean, I agree or being taught how to ensure that I don't waste water, just like you talked about taps, running in public taps.
I'm actually more interested in that, the perspective of this conversation on our communities. I mean, cultural practices, I'm talking about in our different cultures, in our traditions that we grew up with over time, in the various communities. I'm not talking about the taps and all those things. I'm talking about how we ensure, whether or not we do, water safety in the local communities, because there are vulnerabilities to unhealthy and unsafe water for drinking is higher than in urban Nigeria, don't you think?
Sorry again, I lost you at the point.
You were talking about the cultural practices in the context of policies, but I'm talking about the cultural practices as a standalone, things that we've done over time, that, you know, it's the way we are as a people. How do those activities, those behavior, act to support healthy water or mitigate against safe drinking water for people?
Yes, there's a linkage. And the reason why I went to the policy level was because I was talking about usually the very participatory and consultative nature of the way you should do policy. But at local levels, we also engage communities. We do what we call water safety plans, which is mainstream into what they already do. For instance, open defecation and its effect on water. You try to end open defecation in a community because you let them realize that open defecation within the community, eventually, because many of them fetch water from the same streams. Animals drink from the same streams. And this water is the only one they have, in some cases, to also use for domestic purpose. Now, these are practices that you can't throw away. But you need to let them see the danger and then work with them to ensure that they then agree to have safe water sources.
It sounds to me,
that are locally developed and locally owned, and then locally managed for safety without exposing themselves to the implication of those negative practices that impact on clean water for them to use.
It sounds to me that you just gave the chairman, the commissioner for local government in every state, a job to do, perhaps even starting with the research today. Well, it's a conversation starter again. Hope we didn't even get to talk about so many things. Initiatives at the federal or state levels over the years and how they have promoted the ideals intended for the World Water Day to achieve. But I guess we've hopefully been able to start that conversation and hope that, you know, over time we'll take it on. Thank you so much for your time this morning. Kola Olibanwo is Head of Advocacy, Policy and Communications, WaterAid Nigeria. We appreciate your time today.
Thank you for having me.
All right. When we return, it's World AMPA Week. Is there such a thing as World AMPA Week? No, it's AMPA Week. We'll be right back.